Alright, so before we get into the video, just want to warn you guys, I broke my mic. I'm using a temp right now, so the audio is gonna be so bad. Please forgive me. I'm waiting on my new one to show up. We'll be back to full strength next one. Alright, so to start, I love main character versus battles. There's usually a lot to scale them with, since they're the star of the show. Generally, they're gonna have the most screen time. In this case, we have two main characters who start off their stories down bad in opposite ways. Yuji starts his Jujutsu RPG with insane physical prowess, but negative stats in every other category. In JJK, you're basically irrelevant if you're caught lacking in these specific categories, essentially making Yuji start his journey as an NPC.
He's pulling his cock out!
Denji, on the other hand, starts his RPG with a pet devil, and after he merges with it, we find out it's the most broken, unfair, unbalanced thing in verse. Like, for real, this dog sleeps in Tim's, has 8 felonies, and is halfway through a backwood in every mugshot. Denji is super relevant power-wise after his transformation, but to start with, he is so down bad that he thinks being a slave for Makima in exchange for free breakfast and getting to talk to a girl is a dream come true. Now, there's good reason to bring this up, as it plays into their mindsets while fighting, and we'll be going over how this matchup goes both in character and bloodlusted. And for the sake of this video, we're going to go through all the main versions of these characters, just so that way we cover absolutely everything and all questions are 100% answered by the end of this. So first off, beginning the series, Yuji is just a super athlete, demonstrating physical strength and speed well above the fastest and strongest athletes in the real world. For example, he's shown throwing a shot put roughly 30 meters. For context, the world record for shot put is currently held by an Olympian named Ryan Crouser, who launched his shot put just over 23 meters. However, with Yuji, this is likely the lower end of his raw strength, as the shot put was stopped because Yuji, for whatever reason, decided to throw the shot put directly into a metal pole, which he bent. But he's also stated to be able to run the 50-meter dash in 3 seconds, which also is well beyond any world record for any athlete that we're currently aware of. I would normally dismiss this statement, specifically because it's just sort of an offhandedly mentioned feat by some random background student. However, Megumi seems to be impressed by Yuji's physical abilities, especially his speed, after Yuji accidentally blitzes him. And for more context, at this point in the story, Megumi's actually scales to grade 2 curses, which means the passive physicality he would get from his own cursed energy would put Megumi himself well into these superhuman levels. So his impression of Yuji actually speaks volumes. Megumi also isn't just impressed, he actually contemplates whether or not Yuji is comparable to Maki. If you've seen literally any other video I've made on JJK, you know Maki is well above superhuman in raw speed, strength, and durability, and that's why she's about to whoop Naoya's bitch ass for the second time, hashtag Maki on top. However, it's pretty safe to say that Megumi doesn't think Yuji is as fast and as strong as Maki at this point. Megumi seems to be more so implying that Yuji is reaching physical levels no human should reach without cursed energy mastery. Now, we can also examine Yuji's other feats, such as fragmenting concrete, launching himself from the ground all the way through the 4th story window of his school, and if that sounds ridiculous, that's because it is, because Yuji is superhuman with this feat alone, but I'll save the calcs for another video. But all you need to know is that he's just getting into superhuman levels of strength, speed, and durability at this point, just to sum up. And at this point in the series, his only hacks ability seems to be a vague energy sensing, and this is demonstrated when he first arrives after hours at his school. We know that normal humans can't sense curses in general. In fact, we see his normal non-main character friends get within a couple feet of these curses and be none the wiser until these curses grow weary of being ignored at this party and start running pockets. However, Yuji can sense the, quote, pressure of these spirits before he even gets inside the building. Now we move on to start a series, Denji. So Denji begins the story with some of the worst main character scaling possible. He should be in great physical shape due to constant manual labor and more or less freelancing as a devil hunter. He accomplished all of this by throwing his chainsaw dog at problems until they ceased to be problems. But despite this, Denji is likely far below the level of peak human in speed, strength, and durability, but especially durability and stamina. Denji has basically no examples of physicality that would demonstrate anything above the requirements to swing a small chainsaw dog. And that's well below peak human levels, as your average adult demonstrates this level of strength. On top of this lack of feats, Denji is also trying to hold it down while literally starving with one eye, one kidney, and one lone left as he's been selling his organs since before the story began. To add to this, Denji is suffering from a fatal heart condition passed down to him from his mother. Him getting too excited while resting literally, triggers fits of coughing up blood, so Denji is absolutely not in fighting shape by any means, especially not with like an absolute unit like Yuji. As far as hacks, Denji has no saving grace here. He has no ability that he could use in a fight other than the chainsaw dog, which as we see in the first chapter was not enough to even fight off, fodder zombies. So at the start of the series, Yuji outclasses Denji in every way. And Denji can swing his chainsaw at Mr. Itadori all he wants, but Yuji would have no trouble avoiding Denji, and the power difference between the two leads me to believe Yuji would probably finish Denji in one hit. Bloodlusted or in character, Yuji wins at this stage, and it's really not even close. Now for the next stage of this, we look at their mid-series power spikes. For Yuji, this is right at the very beginning of the Shibuya arc, after he fought the first two cursed wombs. As far as AP and durability, Yuji demonstrates superiority to the special grade curse Hanami and a few others. It's hard to get an exact measure on Hanami's power, but we do know that special grade curses are capable of tanking rapid succession carpet bombing, which would put them at multi-building level. Yuji beating the absolute mess out of Hanami with Black Flash shows that he is at least on this level. I've seen people call this an outlier, however, Yuji tears through two other high-end special grade curses when he fights the cursed wombs, so no. Also, this is a great segue into Yuji's speed. One of the cursed wombs he fought is a blood user named Choso, whose technique allows him to fire blood at just over the speed of sound. Yuji reacts to this specific ability a number of times, which demonstrates a level of relativity to this speed. Now, by itself, this could be an outlier, however, Yuji is also shown to dodge bullets as well as be directly compared to Maki at this point. And Maki obviously being well past Mach 1 by this point in the story, but we'll save Maki hype for another video. So, to sum up, Yuji is at around multi-building level with about Mach 1 speed. As for Yuji's hacks, at this stage of the story, Yuji has, well, one of the main ones would be astral offense and defense. For those of you who don't spend your life obsessing over anime characters, astral offense basically means he can hit you in your soul, right? This is achieved in two ways, the first being through basic cursed energy manipulation, or Jujutsu sorcery. And Jujutsu sorcery basically allows users to not only engage opponents, on a soul level, spiritual level, on an astral plane if you will, but also exorcise cursed spirits, effectively removing them from the living world. Jujutsu sorcery also affords its users astral defense, fortifying their own souls against astral offense. And the degree to which one's soul is fortified by this is usually determined by the raw cursed energy reserves and mastery of said cursed energy, with a few exceptions such as Mahito, who practices astral defense by warping and moving his soul out of the way of astral hits. The second offense Yuji has comes in the form of Black Flash. Black Flash actually deserves its own video, but the TLDR on this one is that Black Flash is a strike that hits at more than 2 times the usual strength of the user. The first day Yuji learns this in the Sister School event, he is capable of using the move 4 times consecutively. And just a side note, when I reread JJK for this video, I actually noticed that Yuji is stated to have the ability to see the contours of a soul and identify the vulnerable and more powerful parts of it. When Mahito says this, he is referring to the danger he's in, as Yuji has the ability to strike his soul in the most vulnerable places, despite him being able to move it around. Now, the reason this is important is that Denji, the Chainsaw Man, he is somewhat susceptible to physical damage, but you actually have a much better chance of beating him with astral offense, especially if you can identify where the power is coming from, in this case being the soul of Pochita that he is merged with being in his heart. If Yuji can identify this and, effectively take it out, he wins the fight. It's a good win con for him. And consistently, beating on the soul of devils in Chainsaw Man has been pretty consistently shown to be more effective than just using physical damage. We see this demonstrated and alluded to a number of times throughout the Chainsaw Man series. There's plenty of examples and statements that lead us to this conclusion, but the most glaring piece of evidence for this is that the world leaders, the government, needing to enlist other devils to fight the devils terrorizing them at any given point. Makima is the biggest example of this, as she is one of the most feared and hated devils we know of in the series, yet the world leaders must work with her, and even sacrifice their own citizens to her so they can get her help. Further to this, Denji specifically is shown to survive most fatal injuries as long as they are physical, and do not actually remove his Pochita heart. More to this point, the more powerful devils in the series have a base regen that allows them to heal from most physical damage and even absolute bodily destruction if they're able to drink the blood of someone else. More powerful devils seem to heal faster, and some devils simply have contracts that allow others to die in their place, Makima, or are just granted pseudo-immortality by other abilities. At the midpoint of the series, Denji's base regen outpaces the damage he takes from setting himself on fire. However, you could argue even this was due to the amp he got from drinking the blood of Santa Claus's dolls. So Denji's regen abilities are pretty circumstantial even for physical damage, let alone his lack of astral defense at the midpoint of the story. Also, as a side note, when a devil, quote, dies, it is reincarnated shortly after. The only firmly established way to truly get rid of a devil is to erase it on a conceptual level, as the original Chainsaw Man did. However, when devils are reincarnated, they come back as completely different people with different personalities and memories, so for the sake of this being a versus battle, we won't require that Denji be erased conceptually as the win condition for this particular instance, as killing him at all pretty much ends the battle anyway, as it's unlikely that Denji himself would reincarnate with the desire to fight Yuji again anyway. Now, as far as stats, Denji at this stage of his development is much more of a threat now that he is the actual Chainsaw Man. Keep in mind, in Chainsaw Man, the best measures we have of Denji are derived from his relative scaling to the other opponents he runs into, instead of direct feats. In his fights, he's capable of taking building-shattering attacks, and subsequently contesting and eventually beating enemies at this level, namely Rize and the Typhoon Devil. It's actually implied that Denji is somewhat stronger than Rize herself, but that Rize is simply a much more talented fighter due to her lifelong training and experience. So we can comfortably put Denji at about building level for AP and durability, as he doesn't show anything much better than this for the most part. Scaling Denji's speed, it's a similar process insofar that he doesn't have any crazy direct feats, but more so relative scaling to those around him. His best scaling would come from the Katana Devil, who can casually react to bullets, perception blitz both humans and mid-range devils like power. Calcs aside, this puts him just above Mach 1. Denji not only keeps up with this devil, but also briefly outspeeds him hard enough to cut him in half, although take this with a grain of salt, as Denji was hoping to catch the Katana Devil off guard with a strategy that would get me demonetized if I were to relay it to you. However, the strategy doesn't necessarily detract from the feat itself, since Denji does just in fact charge in first into this guy, because strategy be fucked, damned, fucked again, and left in a dumpster. So, to sum up, Chainsaw Man lands at about building level AP and durability with about Mach 1 speed. It should also be noted that Denji can fight for days on end, without sleep or food. He actually does this against the Eternity Devil in the hotel incident, in which he just continually attacks this thing until it decides to give up. Which, again, where is the strategy? When looking at his hacks, there's the obvious advantage of having all 5 limbs anthropomorphized into building level chainsaws, as well as moderate regen and high-level survivability that doesn't quite measure up to baseline immortality. And the serious regen feats for Denji required blood, but as far as surviving fatal wounds, he actually seems to have that one. It seems to be inherent to, I guess, the Chainsaw Man's kit. Surviving having his neck broken on a number of occasions, drowning, being set on fire by himself, and a whole host of other nonsense that should have been fatal. Now, Denji can also use the chains of his the chains of his chainsaws as whips, and as a surprisingly effective binding. These chains appear to be about as strong as he is, since he was able to restrain Rize with them despite her struggling for her life to get free, because he was intending to drop both of them in the ocean. So, how does this fight go at the midpoint of the story for these guys? Well, again, Yuji wins this one. And this shouldn't be surprising to anyone. Yuji at this point is slightly faster than Mach 1, which Denji just barely reaches at his best speed scaling here. On top of that, Yuji caps out at multi-building level due to his relative scaling to high-end special grade curses, who can survive rapid succession carpet bombing, while Denji tops out at baseline building level in AP and durability. And to really put the nail in this coffin, Yuji's Black Flash, along with his ability to see the contours, quote-unquote, of the soul, would likely allow him to see Denji's heart is the source of his power, and Yuji in character does look for weaknesses like this to exploit. And this pretty much means that Yuji can and likely will destroy Denji's heart, effectively ending the fight and completely disabling Denji if it doesn't just outright kill him. And in case you're wondering, if you have this fight bloodlusted and out of character for both of them, it actually goes even worse for Chainsaw Man, as Yuji, if he's desperate and willing to do anything to win the fight, he is likely to force Sukuna out to trade places with him, and if you follow JJK at all, you know Sukuna is much more powerful than Yuji at pretty much every stage of the series, as well as having access to real immortality and regeneration on par with the likes of Majin Buu. We see Sukuna ripped his own heart out and continued to fight and survive, completely reviving himself after being dead for hours, regrowing limbs at will. I mean, Denji could never reach a speed at which he could harm Sukuna, but even if he did, he wouldn't have the raw damage output to hurt him, and then even if he did, Sukuna still just regens constantly, much faster than Chainsaw Man does. Sukuna would be more than capable of just beating Denji into oblivion, but his dismantle and cleave abilities would bisect Denji over and over indefinitely until Denji was eventually taken out, or more likely, Sukuna just cuts that heart in half. Now, Yuji and Sukuna both outclass the Chainsaw Man here, and there's no way Denji wins this in character or bloodlusted. So, now, for the main event, these characters at their peaks are completely different animals. For Yuji, his peak is actually 15 Finger Sukuna, the one that disrespected about half a city just to flex on a monster that can't talk. For Denji, his peak is the full devil form he gets when the Hell Devil attacks Makima. Now I'll break this one off early. Chainsaw Man wins this one, no ifs, ands, or buts. Big GGs, fat stomps, no Rize. This is so bad. So this version of Chainsaw Man simply outscales Sukuna in every way. Even if we highball Sukuna with this feat here, right? Sukuna's highball AP and durability can be calced at as high as about 380 kilotons of force or large town level. We see Chainsaw Man tank Makima using her finger blast to launch him into orbit. Now, let me break down why this is more impressive than what Sukuna did. Makima uses 3 blasts to accomplish this, and each individual blast would be more damaging than what Sukuna does in this scene here. So let's just get that started. And not only does this feat demonstrate durability for Chainsaw Man, it actually shows that Makima is at a level of speed far beyond anything we see from Sukuna. Sukuna's best speed feat is blitzing Maharaga, and there is some ambiguity about the feat, but I was able to highball this to be a little over Mach 14 for Sukuna. Alright, it's a little bit faster, The speed is still nothing to Makima, as she needs to be able to react to the speed at which she's launching Chainsaw Man and still snipe him while he is moving, when we calc this feat, we get different answers depending on how long you think it takes for the sequence of events to happen. So I'll just put each interpretation on screen so you can decide where you personally feel this should be scaled. However, even the lowest of low balls of this puts Makima well past Mach 300. And subsequently Chainsawman as he blitzes her and straight up wins against her more than 20 times, while Makima has help from her OnlyFans army. So even if we highball Sukuna and lowball Chainsawman, the strength difference makes this a favorable fight for Chainsawman, let's say, but the raw speed just makes this unwinnable for Sukuna. It's not fair. And for context, Chainsawman, even with lowball calcs, is more than 20 times faster than Sukuna at this point. So it's sort of just unwinnable for Sukuna. So there's gonna be a question, right? Can't Sukuna just revive himself every time he dies like he did in the early series? And this is actually very valid. If he was fighting anyone else, this would actually be a win con. However, not only can Chainsawman likely out-sustain Sukuna due to Sukuna not having infinite cursed energy like Gojo, but Chainsawman is so feared in his verse because he tends to eat his opponents. And for those of you that don't know, when Chainsawman eats an opponent, they are erased on a conceptual level. For obvious reasons, this is a hard stomp, GG, no re for Big Chain Master P. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.